while it may not make total financial sense
Mm-hmm.
in the short term,
Mm-hmm.
as a Christian, he is called to more holistically view things.
Mm-hmm.
And so the aesthetics of what he's doing is a part of that.
Right.
And so for the Christian, it is a cost of doing business to do it beautifully.
Right.
Now
Mm-hmm.
we're getting
Mm-hmm.
scary.
Stay tuned for the show. Poets at War is sponsored by the following.
I'm Ian Wilson, and I create graphic art using primarily traditional methods, supplementing with digital where it's needed. I use a real pen, a real paper, a real graphite to make my art. I like to feel my art. I've always been this way. I love the feeling of a pen or pencil in my hand, the sound of graphite scratching paper, and I love the sight of a nice black line making its way across the page. So why choose traditional art over digital? Traditional art has an organic, natural quality that seems to be missing from most digital illustrations. The illustrated books and comics that were made in the days before digital have an excellence and staying power that is just as vibrant now as it was decades ago. These are the stories that stay with you. Dr. Seuss, Winnie the Pooh, Where the Wild Things Are. People still read these. I'm currently working on my own graphic novel series, Legend of the Swordbearer, and I've also had the privilege to draw graphics for 2 motion comic series, along with illustrations for a small magazine, Logo Sophia magazine, and various book covers. Don't let traditional art fade into the dust. Help me keep it alive. You won't regret it. Visit my website at ianthomaswilson.com for more info.
Hi, I'm Joshua David Ling, and I'm resurrecting epic poetry for nerds like you. Come join me at joshuadavidling.com or just about anywhere on social media.
Today on the show, we speak with Benjamin Curlee, wonderful filmmaker and creator, about art, theology, and business, and the intersection thereof. Join us in the trenches. This is Poets at War.
God of song, said the warrior bard, though all the world betray thee, one sword at least I right shall guard, one faithful heart shall praise thee.
Exactly. So, what you got drinking?
A little bit of Woodford's Reserve bourbon,
Nice.
and then sweet tea and lemonade.
Ooh, that sounds good. Man, I
Very
wish I had
good.
something. I don't have anything right now. I was gonna get something. I could get something, but I had smoke earlier. I did my I put orange peel in my tobacco for a couple days. Gave it a
Yeah.
really nice flavor. So I'm
Infuse it a
really
touch.
enjoying that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Next time you're over here, I need to let you use some of the, I think it's peach infused tobacco.
Ooh.
It's
I'm sure it is.
amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Just
it's like you don't even
regional
have to
flavors
smoke it.
right
You
there.
just open up the can,
Mhm.
the loose leaf, and it's like
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. Hazel actually like smelling my loose leaf. She's like, "Oh, it smells so good, Daddy." So yeah. But yep. So yeah. Well, it's been a minute since you and I have been talked face to face, quote unquote.
Yeah.
We've been so busy with everything, especially you guys. You got a new baby and everything.
Mhm.
And how old is she now?
She is, hang on, approaching 3 months here in a
That
few
sounds about
days.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So you got the 2 boys and the girl,
Yep.
and things are just crazy around there. We're both working for the same company, so we've got all the, crazy stuff there. But yet we just haven't been able to make a link up. I was looking at making a crazy mad dash, figure out where I'm gonna stay the night of, attempt at Marcus Pittman's thing. I don't know if
I
you saw
know,
this.
right? Yeah, I'm not going to be able to make it. I really want to though, because it's like that is just out of reach.
Yeah.
Like, 5-hour drive.
And so you're
To
even
do
closer.
it-
Like
Yeah.
it's like 7 for me, but
Yeah.
like I can't.
Yeah.
It's just
No,
too
and
much.
honestly, like I don't really have anything to contribute, but
Yeah.
I wanna know what's going on.
The room where it happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But we'll figure it out. We're still on that train for sure. So, but yeah. Speaking of lore, speaking of people who are trying to, it's not even glass ceilings at this point. It's more like glass shatter the glass building and
Mhm.
rebuild. You know, that's really what it's like at this point.
Mhm.
That you've got Franklin and was where they're meeting, and you've got Hollywood. You got a couple other small independent places. You know, you have New York has somewhat of a scene because of Broadway being there for so long and whatever else. You know, you've
Well,
got
New York was a pretty good scene for television for a while.
Yes,
Until
yes.
until Atlanta and Miami and other places started competing.
right.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised Vegas isn't more of a thing for filming. That's one of those places I'm like, it wouldn't take much to really get something going in Vegas for filming.
True.
But
A lot
yeah,
of money in Vegas.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's so weird to me. Like, you know, we're coming up on the whole Crowder situation, or we're coming off the whole Crowder situation. Yeah, I think it's still kind of going. I haven't really checked. But like, I don't know, man. I also listened to a thing from Red Pill Media. I sent you that a while back. It got lost in the shuffle. Probably didn't hear it, but Marcus Pittman shared it, and it was basically just a bunch of people who were also dealing with Daily Wire saying, "Hey, we want to do fiction. We want to do fiction." You know, and then basically we want to do stories. We want to talk narrative, and they're like, "Yeah, basically all the money's in talking heads, and that's what we need to
Yes.
be doing because it's a business and blah blah blah." And you know, you being someone who has been in the business, and you're like, in many ways, I'm not saying anything about anyone else, but basically number 2 in our company, you know, behind Adrian, like, you've seen the business end from within and from without, and you see what these companies are doing. Like, where's the lines on this kind of stuff where you're being a faithful Christian? You know, how do you draw those lines? What are your thoughts on Crowder and all that? Just jump where you want to jump. I want fire away. I want to hear you.
Oh yeah, no, totally. Okay, so I saw the headlines about the same time anyone else did. I at the middle of that, like, because I think that was a month ago, is when all of that exploded, or just over. And I didn't have the bandwidth to really dig into it. So this evening I watched the latest from Crowder on that subject. I think it was recorded. YouTube said it was recorded 4 weeks ago.
Sounds about right.
So he at least he doesn't seem to have said anything since then. And I've seen some tweets from Ben Shapiro and other people cross my timeline. So I generally know what's going on, but I don't know the details.
Right.
Essentially, the way I see it right now is they're both right and they're both so wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Steven Crowder, he's absolutely right in wanting them to change their business model. He knows for a fact that YouTube is not sustainable. He knows for a fact that conservatives are going to have to build their own platforms. He's dead on there. And he's ready to jump into it a lot sooner than someone like Daily Wire is. Now, here's why. Daily Wire's got big money. Okay, they don't want to use someone else's platform. Dollars to donuts, Daily Wire is working on building their own platform. They have with their website and membership and everything for a while now. They've been fleshing that out. So it's only a matter of time before they really start working on their own platform. They don't want to share. That's why they offered him the money that they did, because he taps into their audience and they don't want to share their audience. But because for them it is business. It's just business.
Yeah. The other fact going there though is like the big thing Crowder nailed down on, you may or may not have seen it, was they had a contract for talent that they essentially have a template that they're running through, and they gave him one that was, very partial. They said, we can talk, we can negotiate, whatever with this this template contract.
Here's the starting point,
right?
And then let's go.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And they said, and some of his biggest sticking points were, for a lot of these guys, if they get demonetized on YouTube, Twitter, any of these platforms, if they get demonetized, then they actually take a cut in the money that they're getting from Daily Wire, right? And his whole point was, you can't enforce what the woke people are already enforcing on us and double down on that. You need to stick to your guys, stick to your talent, and have their back, right? Yeah. And so, like, that was, when you say they're going to be building their platform, I'm like, okay, they might at some point. I don't doubt that necessarily, but it's one of those things where, is it going to be any different, first of all? And then second of all,
yes, because it will be theirs.
But
they will,
right.
And they will enforce their own rules of speech.
Right. as opposed to actually having any kind of free speech, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And so, and then Crowder can't do XYZ because then they'll demonetize him. Yeah. So yeah. Well, we can go into that a little more too. I just wanted to bring that up specifically. You go where you want to go though, because we can obviously circle back to that. I wanted to bring that point up specifically because it doesn't seem like Crowder's so much like trying to build another platform as you stick to your guys and we got your back, and then you can build your platform on our back.
Crowder said as much in his. He kept saying, we're trying to build a culture. We're doing this for society at large. We're doing this for America. We're doing this for conservatives. He's, at least the language of his brand. Now, this is where it gets sticky because Crowder has been clearly the instigator in this whole dust-up.
Oh, for sure.
And by baiting Daily Wire into engaging, it's boosting his platform.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is the Chappelle effect.
He may have ulterior motives.
Right.
But he is also very smart at what he does, at building a brand. And as a comedian, like he knows what buttons to push to get people to engage. And by baiting Daily Wire to respond, like, yeah, he is suddenly thrown his brand, his platform into the limelight for people to talk about and get this discussion going for good or for his own gain.
Right.
That I can't discern that clearly, but
right.
But it's very intentional. Yeah.
Or both. Because quite frankly, this is something that you can, I'm not saying like stumble into like you didn't intend it, but essentially you can stumble through it. You can take your first step and then make the call as you go to maximize whatever, and everything. So that's what the best chess players in these kind of political situations do. And I'm not saying like American politics, I'm talking like business politics, right?
Yes.
So
but circling back to the red pill thing, which I'm sorry I never did get a chance to watch, but you gave me a summary of it, so I think what I'm saying is correct. Daily Wire not wanting to have anything to do with it is consistent here because they're about where the dollars are.
Right.
They don't want to touch that because they are not interested in investing in the long term.
Right.
Not in the 30-year long term. They're looking at the next election cycle and then the next election cycle, like every conservative outlet does. And it drives me bonkers, but that's all they're doing.
Right.
That's all they're doing.
Right.
Which I was talking to Holly this evening about that. And segueing into the main topic, which you wanted, I think, talk about, which was Christians monetizing the arts.
Yeah, more or less. I want to get to like what should be our balance of money versus mission, and like, but also just like what you wish people would start doing more in the bit. Like if you were able to have the ear of every Christian filmmaker and they had to watch you for 15 minutes, give your spiel, Like, what
Yes.
would you say? You know what I mean? Because you've been in this. That's the thing I'm trying to get across. You know, we've talked before, but you've been in the business of making Christian media for very long time at a very high level, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? Like, some people would say, but like, you could jump in on any feature length film and be totally like there.
Well,
You know what I'm saying?
I could fake it till I make it.
Well, yeah, but you see what I'm saying? Like, if it was
Yeah.
just, I'm saying if you didn't have to do any 3D graphics rendering kind of like if it was just storytelling level and editing level, you could go into whatever giant studio and totally just make it through, not a problem. Be in a writer's room, all that kind of stuff. I know you could. So, yeah, you go ahead with what you want to say as far as that goes, because I'm really interested, and then I can feed off that and go from there.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things we were talking about with monetizing the arts, Christian monetizing in mind, is how does one do it right so that it impacts generationally? And is the secular world even doing this well? Take, for example, J.K. Rowling. Okay, she's still making bucket loads off of her art, but she no longer controls it.
Right.
The latest video game has done everything it can to distance itself from her and her worldview. And it still isn't helping them for whatever reason. It's still.
Did you see the meme I posted?
Still funny to watch that. Yes.
Did you see the meme I posted with the Seamus Finnegan? That was so funny. Anyway.
People are still mad, and it is like, no, it is funny. I read and I forget what the news outlet was, but it was an article saying that the main hindrance to this game is the Harry Potter series, because we have so much inclusive worldview. We've got all these different races and genders and everything else in the game, but then we get to the movies and they're all whitewashed. It's like, so what happened to all these people? We can't improve upon it because she's tied our hands down. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, nice woke lenses you're looking at the past with.
That's
but okay.
Jesus joke.
Yes. Oh, but she, with as much money as she has made, has still not been able to maintain her art and keep it consistent with her own worldview. And we have seen, even with solid writers, solid Christian writers, for example, Tolkien, who, yes, for a generation or two, things maintained on course, but then because of money, it was handed off and milked.
Right.
And it is only a matter of time before C.S. Lewis and his works go exactly that direction. So
let me pause you 1 second there.
Yeah.
And bring up the fact of I think this really was, and I think the more I learn about Walt Disney during the McCarthyan, stuff going on and whatever else, the more I think he was on the conservative end with this, even though he fought for the copyright laws to allow Mickey Mouse to not go into public domain, and all the stuff that really screwed up our whole entire copyright system. The fact is, a lot of the stuff that's in public domain is doing better than these, conglomerates that pick up these properties. The people who actually become real public domain are doing so much better today. You look at Wizard of Oz and Wind in the Willows, and some of these products, they're still looked on favorably. They're still looked on by all sides as beautiful, because quite frankly, anybody could do what they want with it if they really want to. So there's a level to which it becomes it goes from pure intentions of the original author, and then corporate monstrosity, and then it comes back out. And I think people are impatient about things working their way back out to public domain.
People are absolutely impatient. That's why we have so many stupid federal laws and regulations, because they stepped in rather than letting society, letting the market, letting all these things correct that would ultimately be good, even though it is a little bit more painful.
Right.
But no, they were impatient. They decided to step in, and oh yeah, by the way, we can gain a little bit of power while we step in and fix the problem.
Right.
Whole nother conversation. Let's not be Daily Wire. let's
Please
not go on that conservative rant.
Dave Rubin is not welcome here. I'm sorry. Until he repents. Go ahead.
Yeah, but so how can you protect that art that God has put within you to create? How do you create the art? Is it that you create the art in such a way so explicit that it can't be corrupted? Do you maintain tight grip claws on it? Do you entrust it to those that you have discipled the same way we heard to entrust the gospel and biblical truths to the next generation and impart it and hand off that art in that way? Or is it, do we just throw it out there and then say, Lord, do whatever you want with it. I'm no longer in control.
Right.
I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of those. You bring up a very interesting point that I hadn't considered about public domain, because I have not really looked into that too much. But looking at, I think the reason that C.S. Lewis's work has maintained its faithfulness so long is because that's one of the things he did. He entrusted it to people that had the same passion as him, believed the same truths as deeply as he did. But if they are not careful to maintain that generationally, then it will, very quickly be handed off for money and go the way of all the other art.
It almost did on several occasions. Do you know about the treatment in the 90s?
Yeah.
For Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe with like cheeseburgers instead of Turkish delight. I hear horror stories about that from people in the industry, man. I want to find that.
Colorful as the 90s are, it was a very dark time.
It's true. We had Discovery Zone, but we sure didn't have Narnia. Anyway. Unless your dad was reading them like mine. But yeah, Discovery Zone. To me, Discovery Zone is the bastion of the 90s. That, to me, like, we lost Discovery Zone same around time as 9/11, and I'm like, yeah, we lost all the nice things around that time. Anyway, but yeah. If you don't know about Discovery Zone, look it up, people. It was amazing. But yeah, so yeah, there's the public domain, and that's one of those things. Like, to me, public domain is the complete democratization of stories once the author has had their they've been able to collect on the goodwill that they put out. I think that's actually a very biblical idea of copyright law. I think that it was originally meant to be very clearly biblical. You get your moment in the spotlight to sell your thing and no one else can because you're the original. And then anybody can do whatever with it because you've given it as a gift, right? This is something that, because art is inherently gift giving, it really is. You're giving a different perspective. You're giving a different view, whatever it is, whatever little twist that you have, you're giving it to people. And that's one of the reasons why I think even YouTube at its core is the level of gift giving that can happen on YouTube is unparalleled. And we have not been able to figure out a way to create a platform because we're grasping at everything. We're grasping at our art. We were talking about controlling your art, and I'm like, yeah, there should be a certain amount of that. So especially within a lifetime, like whoever makes a thing should get the credit for the thing. But we've almost got like a non-blockchain going on in that regard with the internet now. Like I look up, there's a meme that happens and I can trace it back to the original because someone's done the work somewhere. There's some way to find it, and everything has a timestamp on it. And so that just that alone is there's healing even in the places where liberals and everyone else and all the malevolent forces have gotten power. They can't control all the healing that's happening, and it's very obvious to me. But at the same time, we've got starving artists still, and we were starting to come out of that, I think, in the first half of the 2010s, And then YouTube cracked down on AdSense and said, more for us, And once again, it's grasping. Once you get to the grasping instead of gift giving, this is what happens in my view. But it's not like you can give beyond your means, but God can always increase your means. So, I think there's a faith problem personally, but I want to hear more of your thoughts too. Because like I said, you've seen more than I have in this regard. You take off from there.
I mean, it is such a broad discussion.
It is.
I mean, because inherent in like in what you just said, you have just defined art, and that's something that people are still fighting over.
Yeah.
You look at a Levitical view of art. Art is worship. Art is designed to glorify God and tell and reflect the beauty and truths that he has put into creation. Art from a Genesis point of view, from a creation point of view, is again to cultivate what God has laid out and beautify it and steward it for ourselves, for our own resources, but also for the resources of those people around us, and again to fulfill the creation mandate, to take dominion of the world. And taking dominion of the world isn't just preach the gospel. Okay,
correct.
Taking dominion is all aspects of our life, including our art. Yeah, so it's a really broad thing that honestly, there is a Wield the Sword video from Founders Ministries on aesthetics. And I had the privilege of being one of the editors to put it together.
I did too.
Yeah, that's right. You were involved. You helped make
get the
sense
rough.
of make sense of the script and pull the gold out of it and put it together. Yes.
Because I think that very broadly.
Yes. I think that is one of the best primers on this discussion. One of the frustrating things is that he didn't really define anything, and that's his philosophical side.
Right. Well, like even when you were saying like Genesis, Leviticus, etc., and you were saying that I defined it, you're right, and I defined it based on Christ. Like from him, to him, through him is everything. So Romans 11, right? Like the end of Romans 11. That's the whole point of the everything. It's not that it's just the gospel. I'm not going just the gospel here, right? I'm saying everything from him, to him, through him is everything. He is the gift. He is the gift giver, and we in turn give gifts back to him, right? Like everything that is dynamic and energized in this universe in some way, shape, or form is a gift of free will. Right. Of voluntary, just gift giving. Like it's the same in the economy. It's the same in arts. It's the same in all this kind of stuff. And like, I think when we start saying, wait, too much is going out and not enough coming in, we go, and that's when things start shutting off because we don't understand the flow of traffic, right?
Yes.
So
exactly.
Yeah.
No, exactly. No, and I think my comment on that wasn't so much directed to you as it is my Baptistic brethren.
Right.
Baptists are notorious. They are notorious utilitarians when it comes to the gospel.
Ooh, watch out! You might get the Jason Farley treatment. And you're Baptist. He's Presbyterian.
So let me define what I mean by that, rather than just throwing it out there like Jason. We have such a phenomenal love for and respect for and admiration for the gospel itself. The beauty of it is so marvelous to us that we hyper focus on it and black out everything else. And we forget that truth bleeds into every aspect. So I take issue, and here I'm going to probably upset some people too. I take issue with the regulative principle for that. The way most people define the regulative principle, I believe, is too constricted. I think they're misdefining the regulative principle or misapplying it. I think more goes into it. I think it's broader than most confessional Reformed people would like it to be.
Agreed.
Because it's scary. It's scary to make the field a little bit bigger. It is, okay? And that's why until people will sit down and have a discussion about worship and the arts, I think, yeah, keep the fence, keep it until you have time to carve out and like really think through this. Close the gates, okay? But don't leave it that way. Circle back to it and have those discussions because they're so worth having. Start there so that you don't go full Bethel, full Hillsong, and you are throwing in aesthetics for the sake of emotion, not to reflect the beauty of Christ.
Right.
You need to come back and talk about aesthetics. Emotions will follow. Emotions will follow. They don't need to be part of the discussion.
Right.
The aesthetics need to reflect the beauty of Christ, and then out of that pours forth all of the emotions that Bethel, Hillsong, all of those are trying to generate. Yeah. And they have to do that because they don't have the gospel, but that's a whole nother.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And this is one of those things that I constantly have issue with when discussing with people. And I know a lot of artist type folks like me who do as well. You kind of are, you're further toward the technical end of the spectrum than I am, and I'm further toward the artsy end of the spectrum than you. I think that's safe to say. But we both have a lot of crossover, a lot of crossover. And I have found that my brothers who are on the artsy end or further out toward the artsy end than even I am, the biggest issue comes down to they essentially want to worship all the time and don't see how you could have a regulative principle all the time. Whereas the other end of the spectrum with my Reformed brethren on both Baptist, Presbyterians, etc., is most of the ones who really get into, like you were talking about, the over applied regulative principle, over defined, over applied. They tend to also fall into the same trap of, if you're not being this narrow-minded vision of the regulative principle all the time, then you're not worshiping properly, right? Even Covenanters, that I've met have there's some that will say, yeah, this is only for the worship service, but then there are those who will actually go and say that, if you're celebrating Christmas in the realm of the family and the jurisdiction of the family, or in the jurisdiction of the state, or in the any of these other jurisdictions, you're still sinning, right? They'll go that far, right? Yeah. And both of them are falling into the same trap ultimately, and that is that the regulative principle is something set down by our Reformed forefathers to combat things that were not in Scripture being used within a worship service. Yes. Right? Yeah. And the concept of a worship service has been something that has existed at least since Moses. Probably before that, right? Like, we had all these Levitical, services and everything, and the church has continued through that. But you have thousands pre and post Moses of moments that are not sanctioned worship services, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, stories and art are my craft. They're the thing that I go and work at every day. They're my garden. They're my, that's the thing that God gave me power over, and that's the thing that I exercise power over with the jurisdiction and authority of myself as an individual and myself as a father and a husband, right?
Yeah.
And if I become an elder, then as an elder, if I become, a magistrate, same thing, right? Like I have that authority
absolutely.
even in the art realm, and I
All
can
right, you
carry that
Christian
over
nationalist.
to my work, right? There you go. And so the thing is, like, I don't understand how to give that, what I just gave to you, to either side when I'm trying to say, hey, listen to your brother.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, reform guy, listen to this artsy guy over here, right? Hey, artsy guy, listen to your reform brother over here. You're both going too far. Come together, right now over me, like Paul McCartney says. Anyway, but I think that's that complicated with the business mindset person and the crony capitalist, which is a whole other thing that I did want to get into. But I feel like that's really our issue, is the crony capitalist is seeing these two people argue and is going, okay, guys, we just need to make money. Like, if we get the money, we get the power, and we can put out whatever we want, right? Then we can decide at that point. That's the conversation I'm seeing. You've got money guy trying to make peace, and that's the only one the artist or the reform person are going to listen to.
That's the only solution that the pragmatic person can come to.
And that's the artist and the reform person. That's the sad thing, right?
Yes.
You would think that, like, one side or the other, like the reform people would be more Kuyperian, or the artist would be, more classically liberal, and be able to see that there's a bigger thing going on. But no, everyone's so, everyone in this conversation. And to me, that's, first of all, saying shut up, business guy, and second of all saying, okay, you have points, but we're going to wait on those points. We're going to have this conversation first. We're going to get our theology right first, as best as we can, and that's the thing. It doesn't need to be perfect.
No, but we have to have ground rules. There have to be ground rules for us to, we have to be using the same definitions in order to actually have talks. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can't talk about money until then. You know what I mean? Like, that's the biggest thing for me. It's like when I hear these guys, Boring and these other folks talking about it's just a business, Crowder, and I'm like, yeah, but you guys are the ones describing it as a war, and Crowder's calling you on your BS. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, honestly and truly, that's what he's doing, regardless of his methods. I have issues with him taping. Not that taping is a bad thing in
I don't have an
but
issue with him taping. I think there's wisdom in doing that. But I don't think it was ethical to release it.
Yeah, that's possible. Toby made the point. I really like what Toby Sumter said. He made the point that if you're going to perform an act of war, you need to declare it, and he hadn't declared it in any meaningful way.
Bingo.
Right?
Yeah.
That's basically and I've already, as far, not just the Dave Rubin thing, but just in general, the way that they do business. Don't get me wrong, I'm looking forward to Pendragon Cycle, kind of stuff, because Lawhead is an author that has needed to be in film forever ago. The fact is, that's great, but I'm really wondering how utilitarian their approach to Lawhead's gonna be, so
yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so, man, business-wise, because you do some of the business end of stuff on occasion, you have these conversations, you have meetings and stuff. Because we've talked about a lot of the artist's perspective, and we've also talked about, well, some of the artist's perspective, but the big picture, let's say we get that conversation down. We start talking we start talking with the same definitions. You and I have some pretty good definitions going in just in this conversation and over the years and whatever else. So what do you say to the three people in the room? You got your business guy, you've got your artist, and you've got your reformed guy, your moral compass, basically, right? And your question is, Basically the question is, okay, what are we going to make and how are we going to do it? You know what I'm saying? And how do you guide folks through that process? What problems do you foresee? What are you looking to get a hedge around in the arguments, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, once we've laid the groundwork for as far as definitions and everything go, then we need to understand each other's level of responsibility in our roles. The Reformed person, let's just say it's a pastor or an elder. Okay, his foremost responsibility is to his church. And so he has to approach things in how is this conversation going to serve my church and enable them to worship God better, to have so they have a higher view of God. The artist.
And when you're saying worship, just to be clear, because we talked about worship in and out of a service, right? You're saying in the broader sense.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
I'm not just talking about the singing. I'm talking about the whole theology of worship.
Right. The Christian life.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
But specifically applied to his local congregation.
Right.
But anyway, and then the same with the artist. The artist, they need to find a way to. It's scary for the artist, but they need to find a way to narrow their view and apply that. Sorry, total.
It's okay.
The thought just escaped. But they need to do the same thing. They need to understand. That's it. They need to understand their role as an artist and how they are serving their family, how they are worshiping God, how they are serving their local church in the position that they are, and they better be plugged into a local church. Okay,
right.
If you cannot do your job as an artist, you cannot make good art if you are not plugged into the body of Christ. Let's just make that
Nashville divorce.
Very
just saying.
Clear. Let's just make that very clear. Yes. If you are not grounded, your art will suck. Okay.
And grounded doesn't mean that you can't dream.
Bingo. The tallest skyscrapers are still connected to the ground.
That's right.
Okay.
Let's jump in and talk grounding for a second, because this is one of those things that, like, I've heard from people who meant something totally different. Joshua, you need to be more grounded. And it drove me up the wall because I knew what they actually meant. Right. And there are people who they say grounding, and what they mean is you need to have a day job where you're lugging trash. You know, you need to have miserable experiences in order to have any kind of dreaming, right? Which is but okay. So what do us being two different two artists, but two different kinds of artists, what do you mean by grounding? And then I may give a slight tweak on my definition depending on, you know, whatever. Since you're the one setting the definitions, go for it.
Yeah. So grounding for me is, well, first and foremost, applying the Christian disciplines to your life. Being involved in the local church, prayer, study of scripture, submitting yourself to the local church and your elders. Church hopping is too big of an issue in our society. People need to stay and fight some battles and butt some heads. That's where I appreciate a lot of Presbyterians over Baptists, is that they do stay and butt heads. I think they retreat and leave the denomination a little too quickly. They give up. They give up the name a little too quickly. But but aside from that, I appreciate that they are willing to stick it out and fight those things rather than just, this makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't agree. See you later.
Right.
A little too much personal freedom in that. And then out of that, under the guidance of their elders, and as their conscience demands, according to their knowledge of Scripture, their prayer life, out of that, then will pour forth good art. And I can't define it really any more than that, because the arts are in every aspect of life. Okay, the arts isn't just, oh, this is pleasing. The arts is the arts is, did I make dinner well for my family? Are they pleased with this dinner? That's an art.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, is God pleased with your dinner?
yeah, yeah, absolutely,
Right?
absolutely.
That,
Yes.
I'm thinking closer to an Eric Little definition to a certain extent.
Oh, yes.
And so
Yes.
what he says, I feel God's pleasure when I run, basically,
Yes.
right? Like that's his whole, was his whole premise. I think artists, we hear grounding for an artist and we think, oh, a lot of people think, well, grounding is essentially the opposite, right? And I
Mhm.
think where that comes from, there is some wisdom in that. But here's the thing: the opposite is not what you think it is. The opposite for a basketball player who's on the road, an NBA basketball player, who's on the road most of the year doing his thing, whatever else, and he's constantly, working out for and resting his body and doing whatever else. The time away from the grind being spent with family is the grounding, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so for an artist, essentially it's the same thing.
Yeah. It
People
is.
don't realize that. Like, it's being with other people, it's having fellowship with other
Yes.
people in the church. And that's what grounding really is. It's
No.
not, and
Yes.
it's not being around people you don't like either.
Yeah. No, and it is, I think the issue might be a psychology one, as psychology has attempted to define things outside of biblical definitions.
Mm-hmm.
But being an artist doesn't mean you are a different type of human.
Right. Or that
You
you
are
even want to
human.
hang out with people different than you.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. You are human, and that comes with all the quirks that all the other humans have.
Right. Exactly.
But that does
Exactly.
not negate the requirements that your creator has placed upon you.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
And I see less of that. I see less of people wanting to be, because Hollywood is not like the dreamy-eyed place anymore. It hasn't been for some time. Where you can just escape and be with people like you, out of your small town. Like that was what a lot of people believed for a long time. Same sort of thing for Nashville, for people into music who really got, their hearts tugged by that turn at the bridge of the song, whatever else, and
Yep.
they're into the
Yep.
songwriting. Like that used to be a thing. And now we're getting these fragmented, smaller communities, which is really interesting, both online and in person, because they do still exist in person, and people are
Yeah.
finding those to be stronger, which is, of course they are.
Duh.
It's not that they're always better for you either. That's the thing, because this is the thing. Like, I know that there are certain people in church that I can have these kind of conversations with. There are certain, but I'm not going to have them on the level that I do with you, right? And I have an inventory of my friends and my places, and I put effort into building those covenants, those communities,
Yeah.
and I have a commitment to my family, and I have a commitment to my church, and I'm continually trying to build these things alongside my art, and I'm taking people along for the journey, right? Like it's a different approach than saying, oh, I have to lock myself in my room and write X number of words a day, right? Like it's completely different.
Yeah.
So that's my thing. Like, if the grounding to me is, do you feel God's presence in your work? If you don't, you need to go hug somebody. That's basically what I believe grounding is. You need to go back and realize your motivation for writing that book in the first place.
Yes.
All the goodness and love that God gives you.
Yeah. Does the pleasure that you take in this art, do you believe that God takes that same pleasure in it? Does your pleasure reflect God's pleasure in that art?
I just thought of this, but you got your truth, goodness, beauty, trichotomy thing that people always talk about. If you can't make something beautiful anymore, go enjoy something good. If you can't enjoy something good, go root yourself in something that's true. That's the way I see it. These are the walls, going out from the battle, from the center of the city, right?
Yeah.
Beauty's the furthest one out.
Boy, that would eliminate entire types of art. Honestly.
Right?
just entire genres of art would just disappear if people applied that.
Yeah. No kidding. Whew, whew. Yeah. So back to our conversation with our three guys, right? So we've defined what grounding is for the artist, and that he needs to be grounded. And I think everyone else was shocked at what grounding actually meant in this whole conversation, more than likely at this point. So we can name them really quick. Why not? Let's just do that. Just so you know who we're talking about. We've got our money man. We'll say his name is Sir Topham Hat. Anyway, and then because we can easily remember it. Then we've got Jackson with an X as our artist, right? There you go. Yes. And then we've got you're loving this too much. And then we've got our reformed guy.
Come on, reformed name. Do it.
How about Robert? Just not Bob, not Bobby.
No,
Robert.
Yes.
And if you refer to him by his first name, if you're not his friend, he expects you to say his middle initial and last name as well, whatever they are. But for this conversation, he's just Robert. So okay, so we got Robert, we've got Jackson with an X, and we've got Sir Topham Hat. All right, everyone's shocked and amazed by this grounding thing. They're like, I need to apply that to my own life, even if I'm not an artist. Blah blah blah. Now where do we go?
All right, and so now for Sir Topham Hat.
Okay.
He has a business to run. He has employees that he is responsible for. Paul makes that very clear. Like everything that Paul talks about masters and slaves, that applies to him directly. Okay. He needs to take care of those underneath him. He needs to disciple them. He is responsible for them, not fully, but in limited ways. He is responsible for their good.
And I would argue
not just physically, but as a Christian, also spiritually.
That's right. And one of the ways that a businessman does that is to outsource properly to Robert. You know what I'm saying? Right? Like
correct.
This is where the private realm and the church need to work together.
He needs to be sending his employees and encouraging them to stay in the local church. Absolutely.
There's a company locally that I worked for a little while called Seco, Southeastern Equipment Company, and the guy who owned it was an elder in our church for a while. He's no longer at our church. They went to another one. Not bad or anything, but it was amicable. But he actually would bring in guys from some of the local churches, Presbyterian churches, to do Bible studies and free food meal kind of a thing on Fridays. And I thought that was awesome. I just like the way, you didn't have to come. Of course, he wasn't, enforcing anything, but like you get a free meal and you get to chill and hang out with everybody, and it was good food too. So like, he put his money into it, and sometimes he would teach too, but he would outsource that.
Seeking the good for those that have been placed under his care, not requiring it, but seeking it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Continue from where you are. That's just a tangible example.
No, totally. But so he's responsible for that. And a part of that seeking their good is that the company make profit, that it profit well. Okay. So that he can seek greater good for his current employees and seek good for employees that he does not have yet.
Right.
But that he can bring into his care.
Right.
No, I'm not going to talk about that. There's a whole discussion about slavery, not as it existed in the South per se, but there's a whole discussion about slavery. In
I've had it
relate
before,
to this.
I can do a general's report on that.
We don't need to talk about that. We don't need. That's a whole other thing.
Biblical slavery is.
I'm not equipped. Yes, I'm not equipped to start. But there are some principles there that people too quickly dismiss because the word slavery is defined one particular way in our society
versus in the scripture. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. So anyway, back to
Sir Topham Hat.
One of the other things in doing that, in growing his company as an organization is also something that he needs to be beautifying according to his conscience, according to Scripture as he best understands it. And so because of that, he may not be equipped to beautify it, but guess what? Jackson might be.
Exactly.
And that's where, while it may not make total financial sense in the short term, as a Christian, he is called to more holistically view things. And so the aesthetics of what he's doing is a part of that.
Right.
And so for the Christian, it is a cost of doing business to do it beautifully.
Right.
Now we're getting scary.
Yep.
And so for him to reach out to Jackson, to have him consult and help him beautify it and take his God-given talent and apply it in that way and fund him. And that's where the art that was produced during the Renaissance from exactly that model, from people with means wanting to beautify what was in their life and enabling artists who were talented by God to do that. Bring that back, please.
Yes.
Especially in the church. Yes.
Yep, exactly. And all it takes is for someone to say, you had a good idea and we're going to do it. And I'm going to give you what you need to do it. Yes. Now here's some boundaries, whatever else, but we're going to do it. We're going to follow your vision.
And the artist has to work has to work in conjunction with the same mission as Sir Topham Hatt.
That's right.
He needs to beautify it, but beautifying it, there are rules to beautifying it. Okay.
Yep.
Just because the color red invokes desire in people doesn't mean everything needs to be red.
Right.
Every product,
that's something that he should be getting from being an artist and working on his craft. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
That's what being a skilled artist means.
Right. The problem is we have become so. It's not just utilitarian. I'm going to go one step beyond that. We are functionally definitional. Right? We if we see that the academies of the world, particularly the higher education in the United States in the general area, have defined art as an avant-garde smattering of feelings upon a canvas, right? Then Sir Topham Hatt and Robert are going to assume that is true. Like not just true. Like I assume because I heard it was this way. It's more than that. It's like I believe that 2 + 2 = 4. And they don't think that's because God made it that way, but because it's functionally definitional. You see what I'm saying? Not just that they don't even necessarily go as far as the Academy said so. So there you go, right? They're saying that there's this floating functional definition that society has agreed upon in some way, nebulous way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And they don't go, okay, well, wait, Jackson, what are you saying about how God is like, I don't know, an emu? And he might have a point. It might be something really crazy, right? But he has
careful about that CV. But
you know what I'm saying, right? Like, and that's the thing. Like, an artist can say something absolutely crazy because he's observed something.
Yes.
And that's what artists are called to be first for their inspiration, is observant.
Well, artists, artists don't create something out of nothing.
Right.
They have the resources and the canvas that God has laid before them, and they're working out of that.
Right.
And so because of that, they have to be to do their job well. They have to be observant of how God has ordered the world.
And truth, beauty, and goodness are all three in their essence. If you could define truth, beauty, and goodness, I think you can define them all with one very simple thing in almost different dispensations of that same thing. And that is the presence of God.
Mm-hmm.
When you see something beautiful, you feel something of the presence of God.
Mm-hmm.
When you see a man save another man in an alleyway, you feel something of the presence of God because it's something that's good, right? But it's different than when you're seeing, you know, or hearing the most beautiful of Bach's orchestra, like with a live orchestra. It's different, right? There's something very tangibly different that escapes even our senses. But we know we are feeling the presence of God in both beauty and goodness there. And then the most obvious one to many people who would be listening to this is the truth. We know those 66 books and all the propositions within them and all the theology and all the, you know, whatever else. We know that the steadfastness of God, the unmovable nature of God is right there. You know, we've got the beauty end. We can talk, you know, like I said, that orchestra, we can hear all those wonderful sounds coming in and know that there's a God because he made things that make us feel like this. It's very experiential. Then you go to goodness, and we can see justice and goodness being worked out in that man in the alley being saved, right? And we can say that was a good thing for that man to do. Praise God that God put it in that man's heart, that he is working justice in this world, that there is actionable justice happening in this world. Praise God. Yes. And then we can say the root of all of that is back in the scripture. You know, and if you don't tie those three boats together, you're not going to get anywhere.
No.
You're going to be stuck in the ocean.
It will always be a perversion.
Yep. Yeah. So I guess that's the thing. It's like, okay, Jackson, that's where the conversation ends is, okay, Jackson, what do you want to do? Am I right? Is that like, obviously there's further conversation from there, but now that like you basically set the table, you fix the problem at this point. If everyone does what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, it is. How does Sir Topham Hatt and Robert utilize Jackson?
Yeah.
And how does Jackson ensure that he is grounded to those three things before he serves them? And that's the thing. It's not. It's his art in a way, but he's serving them.
Right. It's a gift
in doing that. Yes.
That's the thing. Like that's the other problem with artists is they're so grasping of their own work. Oh, it's my work. It's my life's work. And they're worried about their own legacy. They're worried about grasping onto this and that and the other. And the fact is, your legacy will be how generous you are with those gifts.
Yeah.
Right? Your legacy is going to be how many projects you took on that actually helped people. That's the thing. You can't just take on projects willy-nilly, right? But how many projects did you take on that had a lasting impact, and even ones that you did for free?
Yeah.
That's why I get upset with folk who say, you know, oh, but I'm a professional and I need to get paid for this. I'm like, okay, yeah, you do. And is that your problem? Or is that your brother's problem? Is this a good thing to do? That's the real question. Is this a good project to do? And the fact is, if it's not, and you're not getting, you know, what you deserve for your time and effort, you know, then turn it down.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Well, and
that's what, especially for Robert, especially for the church, that's what they need to, because many times the church is like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, paint a mural on this wall. We'd love for you to do that as an act of goodwill or service to the church. We're not going to pay you.
Right.
Yeah, there's a problem there.
They
have failed to apply the goodness and the truth to how they're interacting with Jackson, with the artist.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is, unless Jackson sees an avenue where the gift is going to way outlive the fact that they didn't pay him, then he shouldn't do it, right?
Yeah.
if he thinks that he can knock it out of the park to such extent that the Sistine Chapel will weep, even if that's not true, even if that's like, you know, his own artistic hubris, for lack of a better term, like quite frankly, if you have hubris that level, like you should go for it and you should knock it out of the park. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the thing. Like that's where the hubris is a good thing, you know. But yeah,
no, and especially we see this especially in the church and in ministries where under the excuse of being good stewards of money, they fail to compensate those with passion and skill and the ability to do great art.
Lord, I kept it safe for you. I buried it.
Yeah. And I see that across the board. And it breaks my heart that I see that most of all with those who should have the most intimate knowledge and respect for the truth.
Yeah.
The world who's the Sir Topham Hatt, he of all of them arguably has cause to pay the least.
Arguably.
Okay. Arguably. He doesn't, but arguably. The church does not.
Yeah.
But ministries do not.
There was a thing on Cross Politic today, and we can wrap with this and whatever else. But Steve Dace was on, and he was talking about Knox asked him why in your recent book, blah blah blah, you implicated all these different various peoples, but you didn't implicate the church in the whole situation. I know that's not how you feel about it, because the church is responsible, and we've talked about this, but like, why didn't you implicate them in the book? And he said, quite frankly, it's because the church has become a non-entity. Yeah. Ouch. Right. And the reason that they've become a non-entity is kind of what we're talking about here. He mentioned specifically how Paranormal Activity, you know, when it came out, was not did not have one iota of religion of any sort in it. The original Paranormal Activity. They didn't seek a priest. They asked Google. That was the first one that he'd seen like that. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, yeah, exactly. Because the church is a non-entity. And if the church wants to be an entity again, if which they should, because it's their mandate, like one of the number one things that you should be doing, and I'm not talking about making them work on your liturgy. Come on, people, have some imagination. And this is a whole other concept with 501c3s. I'm done. Anyway, but good gracious, just support.
Okay. All right. One last.
Go ahead.
One
Take
last
your time.
thought on that. Okay.
Go as long as you want.
We are seeing societally the consequences of the church refusing to stand for the beauty of marriage.
Ooh, you went there.
Okay. And that happened not with Obergefell. Yeah. Not with Obergefell. That happened with divorce years ago.
Yep.
When the church stopped defending the gospel reflection that is marriage in its own doors.
Yep.
Then the church said, we don't care about the beauty of Christ. We don't care about how the gospel looks to the world. Yeah.
Just as long as we've got good smiles when we come to your door and invite you to the potluck, right?
As long as we feel good.
Oh, goodness gracious. So anyway, guys, be your family's bard. Do not turn. Well, let me add this: whether you're Jackson, Sir Topham Hatt, or Robert, be your family's bard. That's a discipleship thing, okay? Do not turn to the right or to the left, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. We'll see you next time in the trenches on Poets at War.
Hi, I'm Joshua David Ling, and I'm resurrecting epic poetry for nerds like you. Come join me at joshuadavidling.com or just about anywhere on social media.
God of song, said warrior bard, though all the world betray thee.
these words awoke within you a stirring and radiant fire, please remember even a bard is worthy of his wages and hire. Go to joshuadavidling.com/support to support me and my family.